Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is my AM reading video for my birthday weekend in July 2023. That's the major reason why this video is going up a little bit later than my usual Saturday-ish, Sunday-ish schedule. Because, yeah, I've been pretty busy this weekend. My birthday was on Saturday. And I did some of my usual stuff in the morning and afternoon. I tend to go to my synagogue for services, but on Saturday I got to go up to the Torah for an aliyah for the first time, which was quite special. And then I went to my writing salon and I brought cookies for everyone, and I got some good work done on my fantasy novel, and so all of that was really nice. And then my parents came into DC. They live in the Baltimore area, and we were going to this swanky Maryland side neighborhood at the harbor called the National Harbor. It's a place I remembered going to with my mom like 12 years ago, but I think really what I remembered was staying in the swankiest of conference hotels, and it was Christmas time where everything was, you know, done up for the holiday. So it was quite a different feel, really. We weren't in the same hotel. We stayed overnight though, which was really nice. And I was surprised by the fact that my sister and her family also came to join us for dinner, which was something they were hiding from me until I saw my niece and nephew like rounding the bend in the hotel lobby. So that was pretty cool. So yeah, it was a good time. And just trying to kind of get back down to earth here. I also went on this Ferris wheel, the Capitol wheel, which was supposed to show you like all the sights of in Northern Virginia and DC, but I don't know, it was raining, so it wasn't as exciting as I hoped. But I don't know, maybe I'll go back on it again in nicer weather in the future sometime. We shall see. But anyway, now I'm just trying to get back down to earth a little bit. Actually kind of in a strange island in between space, because in a few days I'm leaving for vacation anyway, but gotta, you know, wanted to check in here, and then I have to scramble to what little work I'll be doing this week, so that's fun. But anyway, yes, let's get started. So as usual, I'm going to start these videos by talking about the next short story I read in this collection. This is Oi Caramba, an anthology of Jewish stories from Latin America, edited by Ilan Stavins. And this week I read Kindergarten by Victor Perera. And it was actually, there was a similarity to the last story I read in this collection last week, that it was about anti-Semitism, which involved sexual assaults of sorts, really, that it was the perpetrators forcibly removed all the clothing from the Jewish victim, mostly to mock him and, you know, the circumcision and all of that. But this is taking place in kindergarten, and I think this story just worked better for me. The characters came more alive for me, and we're following this young boy, and we get a little bit of his life even before kindergarten, and I feel like there's a little bit of foreshadowing with he has this au pair of sorts who has a suitor who ultimately kills her out of jealousy as well, so that seems to be a bit of foreshadowing. You know, and the way that he did it, it felt like, you know, it was from the perspective of someone looking back, I guess, when he was younger, but like understanding it more from a child's point of view. But anyway, this young boy goes to kindergarten, and the bullies of the class immediately like accuse him of, you know, being a Christ killer and all of that, and there's like a lot of tense back and forth on the subject for a while, but he's still making a couple of friends, and one of them even stands up for him, and then the other I think abandons him later on because of this, and just the pervasiveness, I suppose, of this Christian, you know, belief, as it were, in the Christ-killing Jews, and what that has them justify even starting at a young age. It's a little bit harrowing in that way, but definitely all of the characters felt very alive to me in this one, and the situation did as well. Next, I finished The Secrets of Heartwood Hall by BookTube's own Katie Lumsden. And I feel like I was really kind of hard on this book last time. And I actually, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the ending. I mean, just at least what was revealed, and not to be too spoilery, but it's commentary of a sort, I suppose, about the types of topics that people can write about today versus what, contemporary Victorian writers could write about. So, I mean, in that way, it's really cool to get historical fiction like this to like explore different avenues. I still feel like, it didn't quite hit the vibes I was hoping for, but ultimately I'm really glad with, I thought the story ended well. I thought the characters were really intriguing and had a lot to deal with. I mean, maybe might have tweaked some of the presentation, but I do think that I thought it was a strong ending for all of the mystery that she put in. So yeah, I've also been putting off listening to her own booktube videos about the book, so maybe I'll go do that as well. That could be pretty cool now that I've finished it. I think I'm going to jump ahead to the audiobook, which I just finished last night, which is Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. So this is a very buzzy book right now. I know it's been winning a lot of awards, including recently the Women's Prize, and it is in the running for the BookTube Prize. So I do feel like it probably has a decent shot, 50-50 at the very least, of getting into the final round, and I assume I'll be reading fiction for the final round, so I might, be ahead of the game on this one. That would be interesting. But anyway, it was a really good book. I thought I was nervous it would be more oppressively depressing than it was. I mean, it was it was a depressing book. Demon Copperhead is a young kid from, rural, poor Appalachia who had a really tough life in a lot of different ways, but I don't feel like it was overbearingly depressing. There was some humor in it. I mean, maybe it was listening to it on audiobook and getting the inflections of somebody, basically trying to inhabit the character's voice, but I do feel like there were some not only bright spots, which there definitely were, but also just the way that he looked at his life. It wasn't, you never were quite at the bottom of the barrel. There was always some room for hope, I think, at least for Demon. There were, characters around him who suffered a little more or, came to worse ends. Because, spoiler alert, Demon is not narrating this from the grave, I suppose, but he certainly had some really traumatic and difficult things happen to him. Growing up with a mother who was an addict and who married a man who was an abusive stepfather, and then ultimately the mother dies of an overdose, and Demon has to go into the foster care system, which unfortunately there's a lot of bad actors in that system who he runs into. But even then, after that, he gets some good news, or he really also tries hard for his good news. He's able to reunite with a grandmother and has a sort of golden sort of middle school experience and beginning of high school, playing football, and then unfortunately is laid low by a football injury right around the time when doctors were starting to prescribe OxyContin and that sort of thing, and the Purdue company was really pushing that agenda. It was interesting to remember a nonfiction book I read for the BookTube Prize on the family behind the Purdue OxyContin stuff, the Sackler family. So yeah, then we go from there. Things obviously get a little worse for a while, and by this point we're really invested in Demon and the people he's met along the way. Although there are so many names, I guess sometimes it's a little overwhelming. I do feel like by the end, I guess maybe things were caterwauling a little bit, and I was a little bit less invested during sort of the crisis of the book, and I guess a little bit of that downfall of like rushing into the ending. But overall, I really liked it. I mean, I guess sometimes people say Kingsolver is a little preachy, and I mean, it does sort of feel like, there are characters who are conveniently part of the medical establishment, but I mean, I say conveniently, I mean, as though nurses don't exist, and thank God they do. So, I mean, sometimes we could get into, some preachiness about drugs or the way that the South in particular was left behind, although it was interesting to see Demon and his friends reckon with culture that seems so urban centered, and the realities of growing up poor in the South, and then the realities of what city life is actually like when they move there. So yeah, I mean, I think it was really firing on all cylinders. It was a engaging story. I can understand why it has all the hype that it does. And yeah, I mean, certainly in terms of talking about drug culture and just the tragedy of how, you know, it takes hold with people. It's a really harrowing book, and so I actually wanted to mention it before talking about this other book I recently finished, which is I Could Live Here Forever by Hanna Halperin, which I think I talked about briefly in my last damn reading video. This is contemporary fiction that came out this year, so I'm kind of reading it for the Mock Reads Choice Awards, which is my way of trying to prepare for the Goodreads Choice Awards and read some front list. I don't know, I doubt this one will be on the list, but I am glad I read it. I have a couple other books that I'm hoping to read that are, you know, contemporary / general literary fiction. I'll link that video down below, but this is my second Hanna Halperin book, and her first book was about domestic abuse. So, and she has this background that she was an MFA student, but she also worked as a social worker. So there's, I think, a sense of realism in here. But it's interesting to think about this book in comparison to Demon Copperhead, because it also tackles addiction, but very different sort of standpoint. Because our main character is this MFA student called Leah Kempler. And she has very little interaction with drugs, and she just ends up meeting this man who's a little bit older than her, who has a history of addiction to heroin. And Charlie, this man, he actually is part of a middle-class family himself in a stable home. I mean, there's some backstory that might indicate that, you know, his life isn't as happy and rosy as all of that, but it's certainly much different than the really grim realities of the poor characters in Demon Copperhead. I mean, to be fair, we don't really get to learn a lot about Charlie's life before his relationship with Leia, so we don't know exactly how he got into drugs or things like that. So in a way, it's easier to be dismissive of him. I was just thinking about that, like that, you know, we're seeing him from the outside, and he has some perks in his life that a lot of people don't have. Although, to be fair, even Demon Copperhead had family behind him a lot of the time. But mostly this is about Leia and the attraction she feels to him, and that Charlie is a character, I mean, unlike a lot of the characters also in Demon Copperhead, Charlie is functioning much more in society. I mean, I guess Demon was really functioning well as well, but a lot of the others could, you know, barely, you know, get out of bed, as it were. And Charlie, for a lot of times, especially obviously when he was sober, but even when he was using, he could just present as mostly functioning, and still, you know, had, you know, an attraction to Leia, and she had attraction to him, and that they had this, you know, year behind them. Although, you know, I guess that's also, it was kind of difficult to square as well, that, you know, it was a whirlwind year, and I guess, you know, people really get stuck in, you know, these relationships when they're new and shiny. I do feel like there was almost a little bit of commentary in here with Leia's dating life. I mean, it wasn't overt or anything, but, like, you know, it was almost like questioning the idea of what is love, when does it come? Does it come immediately, or do you work for it, or that sort of thing? Because this was a very whirlwind year-long romance with Charlie, but it was something they both felt really deeply. Charlie was never, you know, a bad person, just someone struggling with something. And meanwhile, Leia, I'm really glad that Halperin actually did stick with her life beyond Charlie as well, and gave her some dimension there too, that she has some tragedy in her past, but there's also just the realities of her MFA program, which I I guess, I worry about writers writing with too much bias about that, like things that only interest us. But, I admittedly was immediately drawn to the, concerns she had about the quality of her writing and getting published, because I'm also dealing with that. I mean, in a, less grandiose way. I don't have an MFA behind me or anything, but it was still, it made her even more relatable to me. Maybe that was a problem, though, because I was like, in a way, less invested in Charlie and her relationship, and sort of more invested in her relationship in her MFA program. But ultimately, I do feel like this was a really touching book about the ways people relate to each other and how addiction threads into people's lives. And yeah, I think I'll continue to read Hanna Halperin if she comes out with something new. And next, I really just started Horse by Geraldine Brooks. I am keeping with reading books that are currently in contention for the fiction semifinals for the BookTube Prize. Who knows? So if both this and Demon Copperhead are on the finals list, I guess I only have 4 books to read now. Or I will, because I'm only like 2 chapters into this. I mean, and these are two very short chapters in a decently long book. This is historical fiction. I actually got this book signed a few months ago at the National Book Fest, and there's some parts of it that take place in DC. And so anyway, this is historical fiction about real African-American enslaved horse grooms, and a particularly famous antebellum horse from around 1850. And so I think we're going back in the past to go into that time frame. I think we're also going into a 20th century point in the past to talk about some art dealing that's around this horse that, was so famous that, there's media created about the horse. And then the third is more, is not history at all. It takes place like a couple of years ago in the 21st century and we're dealing with an art historian and a Smithsonian scientist. And those are the 2 little, intro chapters I read, and it's kind of takes them up to speed with how they get involved very early on with the idea of the horse. And again, kind of like people of the book, the Smithsonian scientist is a Australian character, and it feels like a lot of the work she's doing is kind of similar to book conservation in a broad-minded way. You can tell how little I know about science, but some of this is really reminding me so far of people of the book, although I'm barely into it yet. But I certainly am hoping to finish it soon, and I will report back. And finally, as a teaser of what I hope to get to next, this is The Last Cruise by Kate Christiensen, which I chose for my last page 112 tag video that I'll link down below. And so this is a story about the final cruise of a certain cruise ship, and I think we're following a variety of characters around on it. And I thought it would be an appropriate thing to bring with me on my vacation. I'm not going on a cruise or to the ocean, although I am going to a lake, so I'll be on a body of water. And I thought maybe that could lead to the ambiance of reading this book, and also hopefully I'll have more time than usual to be reading and writing and all of that, and I will be reporting back on this as well. And that about covers it for me now. I'll leave some links to the National Harbor and the Ferris wheel down below and the videos I talked about. And now I'm in a bit of a crunch time. I'm hoping very imminently to prep and film a Try a Story tag. Jen Campbell started these Try a Story tags years ago now, and I've been keeping them up for the last several years in July because it's my birthday month and I love short stories. And in fact, I have been very slowly eking through this collection year by year, and now I've made a much bigger dent in it now that I've been reading it for AM reading videos. But I will be reading another story from this collection for the upcoming video, as well as from a couple of other collections, so stay tuned for that. And then after that, I'm going to be rushing off onto vacation, and on vacation I will be hopefully filming my next AM reading video, so that should be fun as well. So yeah, feel like things are finally getting into swing for me. I don't take a lot of vacation, so this feels particularly exciting, and I'm hoping to really relax and to read good stuff and to write stuff, but also, to hang out with friends and families. And now the only thing is in the immediate future having to rush through some work and some packing and all of that. But well, we have to do what we have to do. So yeah, I hope you are also looking forward to upcoming events for the rest of your summer, reading and otherwise. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.